It's like you never really know. It's like you won't have regrets if you know that you reached your peak as a competitor at some point. Like, okay, that was my peak. Whereas I think a lot of people will call it quits before that, or when maybe they perceive it as their peak. Like if you go back to when you and Berto met, and you were in your late 30s, your perception was like, I don't know how much longer I can do this. It's like if you wouldn't have kept competing at that point, like you probably would have seen, these other competitors in their 40s, they're doing really well and thought, shit, like now, like I have regrets. Maybe I could have done it, And so really the only way you've reached your peak is if you push past it, And I think that's another, if somebody has a competitive season where they do everything right, and they show up and maybe they don't feel like they're as competitive as they were before. Like I think you can, at that point, like you can still absolutely continue competing, and there's a lot of reasons why somebody would maybe want to do that. But if it is time to quit at that point, like at least like you reached your max potential, and I think that's for like Berto and I, like I know, like I think our bests are probably still, hopefully, ahead of us. But I'm sure like it's going to take pushing beyond that to know that like we truly reached that. But yeah, I've always also, with bodybuilding in any sport really, admired athletes that have kind of adapted with the game and, have found ways to, succeed when their physical capabilities maybe are dwindling. And I mean, you look at like Tom Brady, like that's a great example, like he wasn't the best athlete. I mean, he wasn't at his peak form athletically late in his career, but he compensated for that because he was brilliant, at what he did, mentally, and he just knew the game. And I think that's something that excites me. And I think this is true for a lot of, older competitors too, is there's so many facets to this game, the game of bodybuilding, that a lot of people, they think it's just, okay, show up jacked and in shape and like that's the sport. And, Jeff, one thing I've always admired about you is like the care you've taken into the presentation side of things, because that's an area where a lot of people, like if they could get worse physically and improve their posing and do a lot better, and so I think that's, if there's an area, if you're an individual that's like, okay, I don't really want to compete again unless I'm going to be better, like kind of audit the different categories of skills in this sport and think, is there anything here? Like, have I truly feel like I've exhausted all of these? And if not, like if posing, you still see a lot of masters competitors that don't know how to pose. You still see a lot of people that their preps were maybe, the preps themselves were aggressive and they lost a lot of muscle. And so there's a lot of areas, I think, in this sport specifically that people can refine and do better than they did previously, even if they're physically not as equipped as they were in their 20s and 30s.
It's a fair point.
Actually,
That's a true point, actually.
Marshall, if you look at his pictures, like pre-retirement, like his first stint, he was not nowhere near as lean.
No.
And you could definitely tell that, he had healthier joints in. So he had he was more muscular in some ways, but he was not nearly as effective.
Yeah.
And when he came back, he's like, all right, I'm going to do this one thing that, I guess these guys, and he told me himself, like, these guys diet a lot longer now. I'm going to give that a try. And I mean, when we saw him at the Yorton Cup, I think he had been dieting for like close to 30 weeks at that point. And he was, more formidable in his 50s because he figured out like, what is it that I wasn't doing so well back then? And so, I mean, I think about that too. It's like Michael Jordan post his first retirement. Like when he came back, he was like, okay, well, not as athletic and springy. Let me learn to, shoot a little better. And that's how we did it. Ali, when Ali knocked down Foreman, that was not prime Ali anymore. He's like, let me come up with some sort of strategy to neutralize this big fella. So yeah, I've thought about that game as well. It's like, okay, maybe at some point I'll have to reinvent myself and find different ways to be successful. I've also thought about, it's another basketball player, JJ Correa. If you look at this dude, he's little dad bod, 5'10". But he did things that you're like, how is like someone's dad on the basketball court doing his thing? So he was really, really effective. Like, he was pretty athletic too, considering the fact that, like he had a belly that stuck out a little bit, and, like he was maybe 5'10". I don't think he was 5'10", to be honest. But at the end of his career, he was just kind of a bench guy that really helped out like the other guys. And so there's that role as well. There's like the spirit animals in teams where it's like, it's a good guy to have around it. And I've considered that too. Like maybe it doesn't go according to plan, and I start to decay a little bit earlier than I thought I would. It's like, okay, could I still be of use to this sport, and help others get the most out of themselves? I mean, that's a possibility too. All again, these are all options prior to like saying, okay, I'm done. So there's a lot of routes, and I guess that's what you'll figure out what it is that you're going to do, because you're going to have no choice. Like when Father Time tells you it's okay, it's time to come back down. You have no choice, and I guess we do have options. They're just not nearly as good as like the peak, or maybe they are. Who knows? I'm not there yet, so maybe there's something there.
It is like a different type of challenge because you're working with an older body. So the things that you were doing when you were younger, you can get away with it when you're younger, but not so much now. Like me training now, it's like I have to be very strategic and not push myself too much. And it's just a different type of a challenge. Even mentally, it's a challenge too, because when you do something for 30 years, it's like the passion and the fire just isn't there. You guys think back to your first 5 years doing this. You guys are probably like hungry. Like, I want to get after it. I want to kill it. But now it's like, I'm on this side. I already have developed, considering, I don't want to like toot my own horn, but elite level physique. And I've already been to the highest stage. So when you go through a lot of those experiences, in a way, it's kind of boring for me to keep doing it. It's like repetitive. It's almost like you're seeing the same thing over and over and over. Yeah, you could try to reinvent, but it's almost like you're still doing the same thing. You're getting as lean as you possibly can, holding on to as much muscle. You're putting on opposing trunks, and you're getting up on stage to show people this physique that you're working on, but it just doesn't have the same fire. That's why, like, when I went to my son's karate class last week, it was almost like something totally new. It was like, and I got sore for 3 days. Like I never felt the top of my glutes be that sore in all my life from doing a bunch of side kicks. And I'm like, and it was exhilarating because I'm like, this is a challenge. Like, I'm starting from ground zero. I felt like that kid bodybuilder at 14 moving the plastic weights. Like, it was exciting. So I'm like, okay, I need something like that. So I don't know, like, what the future holds. Like, I don't even know if I'm actually declining yet, because you guys know how it is. You're not going to know until you're all the way leaned down whether you're actually regressing or not. And I can tell my muscle hasn't gone anywhere. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be better, I'm going to be worse, or about the same. So I know there's a lot of answers later on down the road. But for now, it's still a little bit of a struggle, because I know I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning. So I'm just trying to find like what that why is, what that fuel is. It's kind of going all over the place. And I know for certain, like, I wasn't okay with that. Now I am. Like, I'm just letting the days roll and just kind of rolling with whatever the day throws at me. But it's definitely challenging. And I think this is probably, like, I didn't want to do this podcast, to be honest, because I was like, there's no answers for people, but I think just talking through it, I can kind of see the value, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have probably felt this way. And I guess the thing I could say with confidence is that it's okay if you don't have your answer in the moment, because you just have to go through experiences, and you basically explore and you discover as you go. And what's interesting is, like, 6 months from now, I might do, or wait, 6 months from Worlds now, somewhere in there, I can do Worlds and, like, have the time of my life and go, like, yeah, I'm going to do this next year. Like, I can see that happening. But I'll kind of just wait and see how I feel at that time comes. Because, Brian, I remember last we were watching Birdo in the audience. I was sitting there with a fat piece of chocolate cake. I'm like, I'm good. Like, you're like, I don't need to do this no more. I'm happy being here, eating a piece of chocolate cake, watching my brother do something very special up there. I was living through him, and I had athletes there, and I was living through them. I was enjoying coaching them. So I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm very happy. I'm content. But I think the reason I like going through this process, like, started to back up, was like, I think the initial, like, why was no regrets. But, you know, you start rolling with it, and then, you know, it gets more challenging, and you're trying to be a dad, you're trying to be a coach, you know, you're trying to be a friend, brother, all this stuff. And it's like, man, there's just so much energy to kind of go around, and it can get exhausting and tiring when you don't have the same type of passion as you once did. It's challenging. Yeah. Very challenging. Mentally, more so than, like, physically, I feel good, actually. I feel like better than I did when I was, the last time I competed in 2019 at 48. Like, I felt like I did pretty good at 48. I was pretty happy with that season, but physically I feel way better now than I did then. And that has a lot to do with the training style, the training approach. Just being a little bit more conservative.